Welcome to Attention Retention, the podcast where we explore the world of recruitment and retention in the trucking and logistics industry. I'm your host, Jackie McManus, CEO of KJ Media, a recruitment advertising agency specializing in this space. Today, we'll be joined by Tyler Damazo, Director of Operations for PGT. We'll be discussing his career growth with PGT and the 3 R's: recruiting, retention, and recognition. Make sure to like and subscribe on whatever channel you're listening to so you can stay up to date on all future content.
Welcome to Attention Retention with Jackie McManus, your source for the latest trends in transportation recruitment and retention.
On today's podcast of Attention Retention, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Tyler Damazo, Director of Operations for PGT. Tyler, it's a pleasure to have you on today.
Yeah, Jackie, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to do this. And again, appreciate you having me and appreciate getting to know you over the past couple of years. So you had a lot of conferences and things like that. So I'm super excited to do this with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had that in my notes. You and I have gotten to know each other pretty well over the last couple of years. And it is so fun getting to know you and just being with like-minded individuals, especially in our generation in this space, because, ultimately the goal is to get fresher blood, younger blood into this industry. So when I am able to meet someone that's like-minded, it's awesome. And we hit it off right away. So I'm excited to talk to you about today with your career growth with PGT and now becoming the Director of Operations, becoming a part of the ATA Lead program, and dive into your expertise on recruiting, retention, and recognition. But first and foremost, let me congratulate you and the PGT team for receiving the award of Best Fleets to Drive For in 2023. That is one heck of an accomplishment.
Yeah, thanks so much. And, a lot of hard work obviously goes into that.
Absolutely.
And really it comes down to, wanting to create a great atmosphere for our drivers who are the backbone of what we do and the reason why we're here. So, a lot of the things that we do or are trying to do and wanting to do in the industry and at PGT, we do it because, the drivers make it easy, right? And they are the ones that are truly working hard, and anything that we can do to make their jobs a little bit easier or a little bit better, we want to ensure that we do that for them.
Yeah, and that's spot on. I mean, to have that philosophy within the organization that the drivers are the backbone of the company, they are the ones moving the freight, they are meeting your customers. You couldn't have said that any better. And I am excited to first start and talk about your career growth with PGT. It's pretty amazing that you've been with the company for almost 8 years. That kind of loyalty is rare in today's market, and especially within our generation. Could you share with the audience a little bit about yourself and becoming the Director of Ops for PGT?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I have kind of an interesting journey. Like most people, I feel like they get into transportation that don't have a family member or kind of a legacy.
Right.
You kind of stumble upon it, right? And I started out as an intern here. I did a post-grad business leadership program. And I interned with PGT for 9 months. And after that, I was hired on full-time as a driver manager. Spent my internship in operations, really liked it, the competitive atmosphere, fast pace, everything that the transportation industry brings. And, I spent my first 3 to 3.5 years as a driver manager and working closely with customers, obviously our drivers. I got to travel to some of our different facility locations. I spent 3 months in Houston, Texas. So I really got a lot of good experience and understanding just how challenging it is, right? The industry and how hard it is to be a driver and working with them hand in hand. Fantastic. And then from there, I was asked to do something completely different, and that was to lead our recruiting department. And I did that for about 1.5 years, and that really gave me a great perspective on just how hard it is to hire drivers, right, in our industry, and just the challenges that we face in our industry, and getting a different perspective from the front side of the company, and just getting a lot of different new perspectives was really helpful for me as I transitioned back after that into an operations role of, just how challenging it is to get and find good quality drivers, right? And I've spent like the last 3.5, 4 years back in operations, working with our driver managers, working with our different corporate terminals that we have. And it's been really awesome. We have a lot of newer people to the industry, just like I started out
Yep.
on my team, and I'm super excited for them to see how they grow within the industry and at PGT, and have a lot of those same experiences that I was fortunate to have when I first started.
Yeah, it's evident that PGT really, a lot of companies talk about the career growth and career opportunities within the organization, but it's evident with PGT that they are really, doing that with their employees. And you being there for 8 years during, the highs and lows of COVID, and being able to try out different seats is really showcasing what they want to bring to the industry and able to bring that career growth. And I actually started my career, I don't know if you know this or not, Tyler, but I started my career as a truck driver recruiter. And similar to you, none of my family members were in the industry. And this was back in 2007, 2008. And, the economy's tanking and the company was growing, right? Because freight still needed to move. And I absolutely fell in love with the industry. And I was like, this is the industry I want to be a part of. No, it's not the industry I thought about when I was a little girl growing up. But it's essential, everything we eat, drink, where it comes on a truck. And that couldn't have been more prominent than during COVID, right? I remember having friends and family members calling me and saying, oh, now I understand why you're in trucking. There's a toilet paper shortage. So it's so great that you're with a company that's able to grow, and I'm excited to see where you're going to go within PGT. But let's talk about the 3 R's: recruitment, retention, and recognition. And you hit on one of the key points about the difficulty of finding quality candidates and what that transition looks like. So in your experience, what would you say are some of the key factors to recruiting drivers and gain interest in this competitive market?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the first thing that we've really tried to focus on, especially early on in this year, is making sure our recruiting staff has a good understanding of what a driver's going to go through at PGT, right? So we have beefed up our recruiting staff this year, and a big part of getting them kind of up to speed to what it takes to find and hire quality drivers is understanding what they're going to be going through, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everyone on our team, off staff wise, is required to go through training that a driver goes through, orientation. So they're out in the classroom, we're in the flatbed space, so they're out there chaining coils and securing loads and tarping and getting up and down off trailers and understanding just how challenging the job is, right? So when they're talking to a prospective driver, whether they're experienced or new to the industry, right, they have an understanding, and they can tell a driver, yeah, I've chained a coil, I have tarped a load, I have seen what it's going to take, at least through the orientation process of, what it's going to be like. So trying to give them that understanding and viewpoint,
Mm-hmm.
and also, being tied into, the operations group. So our recruiters, we meet with them weekly with my team and the operations group, because it's ever changing, right? We have different
Absolutely.
runs and things like that we're constantly getting, and making sure they have all the information that they need to properly give that driver the information that, and paint them a picture of what they're going to be getting into when they're eventually seated into one of our trucks.
I absolutely love that. And that's probably one of the most unique things that I've heard so far, being in the space for about 15 years, of companies actually taking their recruiters and putting them through the similar driver program. I think that's phenomenal, because there's nothing better than, you can, tell a recruiter, this is what it's like, but actually physically doing the job is a totally different ballgame, right? They fully understand now, especially if they're a visual learner, they then fully understand how difficult it is to become a flatbed driver specifically. Since you've beefed up your recruiting team over the last year or so, and have been putting them through this training, do you find that your team is able to then attract a better quality of candidate because they're a little bit more transparent and honest with drivers right from the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that combined with, again, the meetings that we have or they have with the operations group, right? They know, right, what that driver is going to be getting into. And another thing that we do, which just kind of ties into the recruiting and retention, ours, is that every driver that comes into PGT is required to talk to somebody in operations before they seat in a truck. So someone like myself or one of my driver managers talks to the driver for 10, 20, sometimes 30 minutes, and goes through expectations. Expectations that we have of our drivers and vice versa, expectations that they have for a job, right? And sometimes we don't accept every candidate that comes in
Right.
that recruiting is talking to, right? Because we want to ensure on our end that it's going to be a match, right? And whenever our operations team is talking to these drivers, we give them a real picture of what it's going to be like to work here, and we're not going to sugarcoat it. There's going to be days where you're out in
Yeah.
the elements, in chaining, tarping, strapping, whatever. So we don't try to, paint it to be always a glamorous job. We kind of want to make sure they have a real good understanding of what exactly they're going to be getting into.
Essentially you're taking the role from your organization of that communication right from the front, right? Between talking to the recruiters and then once they get, brought on or through the orientation process, they are then meeting with folks in the operations team to bridge that communication and that expectation right from the start. And from there, that's where the honesty and then full transparency comes into play. So you're really getting culturally probably a better fit of a candidate than you would have if you were just to put them right through orientation, put them, on their first load and say, we'll keep in touch, basically every other day as needed. That really is a phenomenal approach that your company is taking.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, from what I've seen and heard, the driver dispatchers meeting their driver for the first time when they're sitting in the truck, right? And
Yep.
we've taken the approach of already establishing a relationship with the driver from the jump, right? And seeing them through their training process and checking in with them and talking with them. And a lot of times, if specifically at the corporate terminal here where we do our trainings, we'll send our driver managers out to our training facility to meet with them face to face, right? And start building that relationship from, the very start. So talking to them during the recruiting process, while they're in orientation, training, all the way up to when they're seating in a truck. So it's not like you're meeting someone for the first time whenever they are eventually seating in their truck and going out to move freight.
That's amazing. And what would you say are some effective ways companies can communicate with their drivers to build that stronger relationship? Do you recommend that starts from the very get-go? And then, obviously your team is doing that. How often are you guys communicating with your drivers to ensure that you guys are both engaged?
Yeah, I think the earlier you can start it, the better. And a lot of times from what I've seen, like the drivers, they love the recruiters, obviously, but if you can get your operations team engaged with the driver early, because at the end of the day, that's who they're going to be
Exactly.
working with the most, right? And if you can build that relationship from an early start, I think that is one of the golden tickets to having a successful relationship. And as much face-to-face time that you can have as possible. And obviously checking in, text, calls. There's so many different ways to communicate. We've used Zoom a lot to talk to the drivers. And I think there's so many different ways now to be able to communicate, but there's nothing better than, meeting face to face and talking with somebody and building a relationship that way.
And that's what I love about our industry. We are still old school in that mentality that there's nothing like being live in the same room as someone or and building that relationship. Because of technology and because of COVID, so many companies were forced obviously to adopt technology, and there's a lot of pros to that. But for me, personally, I do like that interpersonal skills to be able to communicate with people live. And then there's something different that's in the air of the room, and you're really able to build that communication and that bond a lot faster than, a series of Zoom calls. So that's amazing. That's what your team is doing. Let's jump to the third R. So recognition. How do you cultivate a culture of appreciation, and what do you do to recognize your drivers?
Yeah, so we do a couple things on a weekly basis. So a few times a week, our entire team and in the office, from operations to safety to recruiting, compliance, payroll, all the way up to the president of the company, we meet a few times a week and go over different things that are happening within the company. And on Fridays, we do kind of a special edition every week where we recognize what we call the proud professionals of the week.
Love
And
that.
anywhere from 3 to 5 drivers come onto the call with 80 to 100 office staff people on there. And we recognize them for either, excelling at a high level in what their day-to-day functions are, or going above and beyond their normal functions. And they're featured on our social media pages and get a small gift, different things like that, and just showing them that we truly do appreciate everything that they do. That combined with this is pretty timely because a couple weeks ago we just celebrated every year we do our annual Million Mile and Safe Driver Recognition Dinner, and it's down at Acrisure Stadium where the Steelers play, and it's a really awesome event that truly recognizes the top people in our company and honestly in the industry. And it's a great event, and just getting to interact with so many different drivers and hearing their stories. We have drivers that have 4, 5, 6 million miles safely driven.
Oh my God. What
an
accomplishment.
That are there. So it's an incredible honor to be able to be there with them and just hear how they're able to do it. And especially for a lot of the newer, younger people, like I mentioned earlier, that are on my team, them getting the chance to interact with those drivers, it's invaluable. And, we do a lot of different stuff. We have a lot of raffles. Every year we typically give away an SUV or a brand new truck
Is that right?
for one of those drivers. So yeah, we gave away an F-150 a couple.
Holy smokes!
Put it off there, but yeah, the driver who's one of those 4+ million mile drivers, he actually won it this year. So we try to really go all out for this event because of the accomplishments that these drivers in particular have accomplished.
That's incredible. And a recent study was released on the top 3 reasons why drivers stay with their carrier. And the first reason was praise and recognition. And it's something, it's not, it's more of a softer value, right? And different companies tackle that in different ways. But any form of praise and recognition to give the good old-fashioned attaboy versus just, what's going wrong is going to go a further way. And I was really happy to see that shift a little bit because for so many years, the number one thing has been pay, right? And, that's pretty comparable across the board. Some carriers, or it's pennies on the dollar, really, when you look at it. But, drivers are really staying with companies where they feel valued and they feel connected to the internal team, which is obviously very difficult to do when a driver is out on the road, 99% of their job is on the road. So it's really difficult to bring the internal world of your organization with the drivers that are, pounding the pavement every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about building effective teams. Director of recruiting, now director of ops. And, I'm curious more on the overall office, if you will, right? How can leaders create a sense of trust and collaboration among team members, especially within the recruitment space?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic question. And one of my leadership styles is like on any of the teams that I've managed or been on, like I've never and won't ever ask somebody to do something that I haven't done or am not willing to do, right? And I am a big proponent of leading by example. And I'm not always necessarily like the loudest or most outspoken or outgoing or anything like that, but just leading by example and kind of showing the way, and not rather than just merely dictating. A lot of times I feel like sometimes it's easy to fall into the dictating aspect
Absolutely.
of it. But more so for me, just trying to lead by example. Any of the, like I said, the teams that I have been fortunate enough to lead, that's the way. And the best leaders that I have worked for, and my current boss, that's the way he leads,
Yep.
by example. And I think for me, that's always been the most impactful when I've seen somebody, approach the job that way, and more of collaboration amongst the group rather than
Yeah.
the leader just dictating to the team what needs to be done.
Yeah, and that's definitely, you kind of hit it on the head there. That's definitely very much kind of an old school mentality of just kind of that, in some companies was that dictatorship. And it's really essentially walking the walk, talk the talk. Because that respect you get from your teammates, your employees, your staff, is going to go a lot farther than just saying, hey, I haven't done this before, but you should do it too, and it builds that, internal collaboration and just overall, self-esteem for the entire division. That's great. I did want to switch over to PGT has coined the phrase the future of flatbed. Can you share more on this initiative and the future of flatbed within our space?
Yeah, so we've really tried to get out ahead of, and be a part of a lot of the things and the ways that the industry is heading, including autonomous vehicles, including battery electric vehicles, hydrogen vehicles. Actually, one of them is right behind me here in this photo.
Yep.
But just really leading the way in all things that we do. And obviously, you mentioned earlier, our industry is very old school, and PGT is still very much the same way, old school
Mhm.
in the ways that we do things, but also leading the way in a lot of the innovative things that the industry is heading towards, and really leveraging technology, not
Mhm.
only with trucks, but just some of the stuff that we use in the office as well. Analytics and a lot of the different technologies and things like that are out there, working with those companies and building up a team internally to really boost a lot of that type of stuff, so that we can get out in front of a lot of the challenging issues that the industry is faced with on an everyday basis.
Yeah, no, and that's great because PGT is clearly an innovator in the space, right? And with that too, and in the driver market, there was something that was released that we're going to be a potentially a million drivers short by 2030. Now it seems like a far, long away, but it's not. It's really right around the corner, right? And when folks ask me, how I feel about autonomous vehicles and what that looks like, I think it's a fantastic initiative by the industry because we will be able to target talent that's interested in technology. Most kids growing up these days, they're attached to the iPhone, to the iPad, right? And the way that our industry is going to be able to incorporate that, we will definitely also elevate the branding name and the recognition that goes around with a CDL truck driver, because they're going to have to adopt technology, and it's more of that engineer type. And it's really going to bring more value. And then with companies like PGT that are ahead of the curve are going to have a advantage because you've been doing it for, a couple of years, you're part of the initiative, and then that's part of all of your marketing and advertising so that you're able to then attract the newer driver that are coming into the space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you definitely hit it on the head there, and attracting a different type of person into the industry. And
Yeah,
this truck here, it's super cool to be inside, right?
I
Like,
bet.
it's not like a normal truck. And I think anything that we can do to attract the younger generation to the industry, and really leverage the technology that is out there or is coming out, we certainly need to do it. because it's not getting any easier to hire
No,
drivers. It's not getting any easier to hire, even office staff or technicians or
absolutely.
whatever the case may be. So anything we can do to leverage that, I think is an absolute must.
Yeah, and between technology and a lot of companies now are really taking it upon themselves to show the career growth and show the career paths at companies. I would say half of our clients on the KJ Media side, the executive leadership, at least one person in executive leadership holds a CDL, an active CDL, and there's something to be said for that, right? And them specifically, one client I have in mind, he started as a driver. And now, he rose through the ranks and he's now the CEO for a mid-sized carrier. And it's pretty remarkable the opportunities that the industry does have available, and really tapping into being able to showcase that to folks outside the industry is how we're going to get fresher blood into the space. So I'm going to wrap up. Just one more last question. What would you say, Tyler, has been the most important lesson you've learned in your career this far?
Wow, that's a good one. I think it's just to continue to be a lifelong learner. Like I
Yeah.
tell people all the time that like I'm looked at as one of the veterans now at PGT, especially in the operations. Like, I tell them all the time, like every day, like I far from know everything there is to know. And I am learning every single day. And a lot of times I'm learning from, the people on my team or the newer people to the industry because they have a lot of good fresh ideas. I know it's kind of cliche to say, the lifelong learning thing, but I think if you can be a sponge and you can learn from others and build relationships and kind of put yourself out there and talk to people and network,
Yep.
and learn from others that have done it and get perspectives from a variety of people. One thing early on in my career that I always kind of drifted back towards was getting perspectives from just people in the space that were in operations, right? Because that's what I was comfortable with. But, meeting people like yourself and other people that are in industry or in different sectors of the industry or
Mhm.
different modes of transportation or whatever it may be, and learning from them and hearing different perspectives that they have, has just really helped me a ton. And never thinking that, I have all the answers or I
Yeah.
know everything. Being a good question asker and things like that has helped me out a lot early on in my career here.
It pays off, and that's why you and I get along. Kind of a student of life, and we don't know all the answers, but we're willing to put ourselves out there and show up. And that's really half the battle, is showing up and joining these organizations and networking with people. And in my mind, there's no such thing as a stupid question, right? And if you're asking the questions you want to learn, it's only going to elevate you and give you more intel to guide you on your career path of what you want to do. So that's great. That's fantastic. Tyler, it's been a pleasure, per usual. Thank you so much for joining me today. How can folks and drivers find your company?
Well, I hope they see us out on the road a lot, and see
Yeah,
our trucks and our trailers,
perfect.
our website, our recruiting team. And we've been at a lot of events, a lot of the markets that PGT is in. We're sponsoring events, or we're at events. Last weekend, actually, or 2 weekends ago now, we sponsored a drag race in New Hampshire. And
How
we're just really
fun.
doing a lot of different things to, get our name continued to be out there. But our recruiting team and our website is always open. We're available 24/7, and PGT is a great place to work at the end of the day. I've been here now for almost 8 years. And there's every day is a new challenge, and I'm appreciative of everything that comes along with being a part of the industry.
That's fantastic, and you're living proof of that for sure, especially for the company. I will be adding in our show notes a link to the PGT website, and along with a link to Tyler's LinkedIn profile if anyone would like to get in contact with him. Tyler, thank you so much for being on Attention Retention, and we'll see you soon.